terms of relationships and trying to kind of, you know, build on those.
Yeah, I mean it's such a difficult age for any young person to transition into adulthood, even with the best and most stable relationships in their lives. And yet somehow or other we're expecting some of our most vulnerable children to go through this journey and to, by virtue of the way in which we set up our systems, to lose important relationships as they approach 18 and then thereafter. For us, what's key is that we see our role in bringing people together for this child, both from the services which will support them post-18, including their personal advisor from the Leaving Care team, or from, say, disability services, potentially also from YOS to probation or other mental health services, which would otherwise appear to end when they're 18. We're key in terms of keeping those professionals, that professional team, tight around that young person, working closely with them as they reach adulthood, and ensuring that this baton is handed over as smoothly as possible, so that what we're not losing, and most importantly, what we're not losing is that tacit knowledge, that know-house knowledge about how best to support these children and young people.
So young people don't get left behind, and so that we're effectively equipping young people to reach out and to utilise the support that's there, but we're also absolutely giving proper emphasis to their relationships and you know, how they can make new relationships as well en route, as well as, you know, retaining steady relationships that they have. And that's really helpful, thank you. And so I just wanted to think about briefly the importance of children's voices, the importance of advocacy, and your role as an IRO in terms of championing children's rights, making sure that their entitlements are met and any issues are dealt with effectively. Did you want to say anything about that, including maybe some of the changes that you've seen again over time?
Yes, thank you. I mean, what's been a useful process has been the ability for us to really get to understand more about the lived experience of children that we're working with, and in doing that, that means that we are able to flex our IRO roles in ways which become much more powerful and much more meaningful. Because part of our role, we're not paid advocates, but we are adversarial, and therefore it's important that I can therefore take the opportunities to champion the exact views which young people feel are important to them. And whether or not I or anybody else necessarily agrees with them, the process of enabling children and young people to feel like they're being listened to and are given the opportunity to have honest, realistic responses, responsible responses to the issues which they raise is invaluable. So what we're doing is we're starting to get a process whereby children and young people are able to represent the issues which they feel are important at reviews in different kinds of ways, and sometimes we've used advocates for that. Other times, of course, we'll go through a written note of what they said. I've also used video recording where children have been given a video presentation of some of the key areas, and then I've asked professionals as well, in fact, to give a video response to, and that's a great way of involving young people in what can be a fairly intimidating type review meeting type process without having to subject them to the challenge which potentially no young person in your charge would be subject to, which is having lots of professionals in a room talking to them about them. So
but equipping them at the same time.
Oh, absolutely.
Giving children the skills and resources to raise their own voices, as well as having the support around them to advocate on their behalf if necessary as well.
Absolutely.
Bring an advocate in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of, you touched a little bit on children's identity earlier. Are you able to say anything more about that in terms of how we weave an understanding and enable children to understand their cultural heritage and identity?
Yeah. Well, I think that the IRO role is really well placed to be able to ask and investigate some of those issues and questions, because I find that if I'm meeting a young person in Brighton Hove and they are Black British, living in Brighton, I am well placed to be able to. What does that feel like to you? What does your world feel like to have a lived experience of living very much in an environment which does not represent your ethnicity? That's a huge advantage about my role, because I can ask those kinds of questions and also see the extent with which over time I feel as though that child or young person is adjusting or not to the pressures which that places them under. I also think for children in local authority care that the question of identity, which is significantly underrepresented, is the fact that part of their identity, they are in local authority care. That is part of their identity, and that is underrepresented in terms of, I think, how in the past we've enabled children and young people to appreciate that difference about them. And so anything that we can do along our way to improve their understanding of their lived experience through care, including the reasons why they come into local authority care, what the local authority's responsibilities and duties are to them, as well as what we hope for their future. What are our hopes and aspirations? Just in much the same way as we would expect any good parent to do the same with their own child. And the more that we can instill those sorts of conversations and ways of thinking within our review processes, the better.
Thank you. And so just linked to that, again, I'm thinking again about the relationships that you have. So you've got this really important relationship with the child. You're working with others to try and equip the child to deal with some of life's challenges, including challenges around a kind of sense of identity, of the care experience, within that, racial identity, some of the difficulties that and prejudices and stigma that they will face and have to deal with. So there's something about how you enable the child to deal with that, but you're also working in amongst a professional network, so the child's carer, family, social worker, etc. So I guess some of that is about enabling them to also assist the child, but I'm also thinking about areas of challenge within that. So I'm assuming sometimes there are occasions when things aren't working well for the child, and
yes, you're right. I mean, some things. Things don't always go smoothly. That's because we're living in a real world with real people, with real challenges and difficulties, and sometimes there aren't any straightforward, easy answers to them.
So how do you use your role?
Well, I think that the IRO role is well placed in terms of being able to firstly represent. I start with what the child's feelings and wishes are. So I feel like I can properly represent them within the meeting. And therefore I've got one hat which is dealing with ensuring that the meeting and the professional network is properly recognising what's going on for the child, whilst also understanding what the local authority's roles and responsibilities are. My job very much is to bring people together, and I use a phrase which I do carry around with me for different reviews, so it has been duplicated, but I do talk about the team very much. Team so-and-so, because we all have to see ourselves very much, and the more I can bring together the perspective of what we agree upon in terms of our principles for this young child or young person, the more I can get the best out of the individuals who are pulling together to support them. And the best way of doing that is to bring people back to reality conversations about the lived experience of that child.
Fantastic. And challenge occurs within that as well?
Yes, of course. You know, if a challenge is necessary, then we will we'll need to raise a. I will be speaking with a social worker or their manager and raising necessary alerts as necessary to ensure that the local authority, where there is a dispute over what is the best way forward for the child, that those matters can be resolved in ways which we are happy that are both satisfactory in terms of the child, their wishes and their needs, alongside also the local authority and their intentions. But that comes with the territory. My role as being an independent IRO is crucial, and the fact that I have that level of independence gives me that open door ability to be able to make challenges when necessary.
So a big emphasis on trying to resolve issues, so trying to work collaboratively, work with people, really working with the relationships with the team around the child to get things done quickly, to progress chase, to resolve issues, like I say, but where necessary, using your independence as a IRO to challenge and indeed raise disputes if needed up through the hierarchy. Okay, great. Thank you. And just lastly, just to finish off, so you were talking there about working collaboratively. We've spoken about, you know, change and development and improvement and aspirations. Anything you want to say about IRO and, you know, leadership in terms of leading and influencing